Hello, my name is Camille Azaif. Today we are going to see a new artistic activity in Brazil. Its name is Capoeira. The Brazilian capoeira is a kind of sport and folkloric dancing also. Capoeira, Portuguese pronunciation, Capoeira, or Capwj, is a Brazilian martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobatics and music. It was practiced by enslaved Africans in Brazil at the beginning of the 16th century. It is known for its acrobatic and complex maneuvers, often involving hands on the ground and inverted kicks. It emphasizes flowing movements rather than fixed stances. The ginga, a rocking step, is usually the focal point of the technique. The most widely accepted origin of the word capoeira comes from the Tupi words ka, forest, pau, round, referring to the areas of low vegetation in the Brazilian interior where fugitive slaves would hide. A practitioner of the art is called a capoeirista, Portuguese pronunciation, capoeira, Capoeira Rugendas Capoeira or the Dance of War by Johann Moritz Rugendas, 1825. Published in 1835, famous practitioners Mestre Bimba, Mestre Pastina, Mestre Sinhosino, Mestre João Grande, Mestre João Pereira dos Santos, Mestre Honorável Moreira de Oliveira, Mestre Janja. Father. Mestre Cabeludo, Mestre Caramuru, Mestre Cobra Mansa, Mestre Exixo, Jairo, Junior dos Santos, Mark de Cascos. Latif Crowder dos Santos, Cesar Carneiro. The dance and music was incorporated in the system to disguise the fact that they were practicing fighting techniques. After the abolition of slavery in Brazil, capoeira was declared illegal at the end of the 19th century. However, by the 1920s, authorities began to relax enforcement on its prohibition, and martial artists began to incorporate capoeira technique into their practices. By the 1970s, capoeira masters started traveling around the world, helping the art become internationally recognized and practiced. On the 26th of November 2014, capoeira was granted a special protected status as intangible cultural heritage by UNESCO. During the 16th century, the Portuguese bought, sold, traded, and transported African peoples. Brazil, with its vast territory, received almost 40% of these African people via the Atlantic slave trade. The early history of capoeira is recorded by historians such as Dr. Deshobi. Originally, the ancestor tradition originated from Kingdom of Congo and was called Angolo, known as Angola today, a type of ritual dance that used several elements of kicking, headbutting, slap boxing, walking on one's hands, deception, evasion, etc. The purpose was also religious as it both provided a link to the afterlife, which was the opposite of the living world, and enabled a person to channel their ancestors into their dance. For example, during the dance, a person might become possessed by an ancestor in the past who was talented at Angolo. This could be applied to a martial setting in both combat and warfare, which was called Nsinga, Nsinga. The difference to Angolo being that it included weapon use and grappling. During the Atlantic slave trade, this tradition transferred around the Americas. Brazil, Capoeira, the Caribbean, Damia, and the United States, knocking and kicking. Painting of fighting in Brazil circa 1824 by Augustus Earl in the 16th century. Portugal had claimed one of the largest territories of the colonial empires, but lacked people to colonize it. Especially workers. In the Brazilian colony, the Portuguese, like many European colonists, chose to use slavery to build their economy. In its first century, the main economic activity in the colony was the production and processing of sugar cane. Portuguese colonists created large sugarcane farms called engenhos, literally, engines of economic activity, which depended on the labor of slaves. Slaves, living in inhumane conditions, were forced to work hard and often suffered physical punishment for small misbehaviors. Although slaves often outnumbered colonists, rebellions were rare because of the lack of weapons. Harsh colonial law. Disagreement between slaves coming from different African cultures, and lack of knowledge about the new land and its surroundings. Capoeira originated within as a product of the Angolan tradition of Angolo, but became applied as a method of survival that was known to slaves. It was a tool with which an escaped slave, completely unequipped, could survive in the hostile, unknown land and face the hunt of the capataz do mato. The armed and mounted colonial agents who were charged with finding and capturing escapees. Citation needed. As Brazil became more urbanized in the 17th and 18th century, the nature of capoeira stayed largely the same. However, the nature of the slavery differed from that in the United States. Since many slaves worked in the cities and were most of the time outside the master's supervision, they would be tasked with finding work to do, in the form of any manual labor, and in return they would pay the master.
Capoeira version Camille as if. Realization C production Neuero Camille as if. Do you like it? My contact is on the screen. It was good to make this trip with you. I'm waiting for you to come personally. Ciao, ciao. Goodbye.